3 days ago, Xinyang was walking down the street. On the way there was a well in the ground, surrounded by stones. The young man did not notice him and fell right into the hole. It was very deep, but as it turned out there was a lot of space under it, resembling a cave. Landing on his stomach, the guy began to inhale and scream in pain, because he was flying from a considerable height. His clothes were torn in places, and his leg hurt terribly. He grabbed it and screamed in pain. The leg was broken. The guy rolled over on his back with all his might and realized that he would not be able to get out of this place, because he was far underground. Shenny began to reflect on the time of his stay in this place and was quite surprised when he realized that he could not realize it, only to make an assumption that it was either 2 o'clock or 10. The young man tried to get to his feet many times, but it didn't work out for him. He understood that this would not be of any use, because the well into which he fell was too deep, and he would not be able to just get out of it. Shenny got up on his knees and thought about who could save him, but immediately concluded that he had no idea if people knew about this well and the place. The young man also concluded that it was better to die than to be humiliated by Xiao's gang. It was night. 4 people were standing near a huge tree wrapped in a thick rope. One of them was arrested. He stood with his arms crossed, holding a branch in one of them. There were 3 other people standing behind him. Everyone was dressed the same, a gray long shirt with a black belt. One of the guys decided to warn about the danger. He explained that now they are in a forbidden territory, about which not very pleasant rumors have spread. People say that monsters live in it. Should they continue to wait until the person they came for comes out? To which Xiaon replied that he would not leave in any case, because that person dared not take him seriously. Xiaon promised that as soon as he came out, he would immediately lose his head. This was said with special anger, but right after that the guy said that he was completely sure that this guy would not be able to sit there forever. The man reminded Xiaon that they were already standing there all evening, and if the old man also noticed them, they would not be well. Xiaon was angered by this and he shouted that they had absolutely nothing to fear, because the old man was busy with his business with Widow Zhan. Hence he concluded that he could not be expected today. The guy noticed that there are no prohibitions for him. Since some pussy dared to come here, it means he will succeed, because he is no worse than him. Xiaoan took the first confident step towards the path to the forbidden place and ordered others to stop believing in nonsense. Still, one of his guys repeated the rumors about the monster living inside. Meanwhile, a large flock of black and red crows swooped down on them. All the guys were seriously scared, thinking that it was a monster. They began to run away from that place in a panic. Xiaon began to think about himself and assumed that something bad had happened. He had a feeling that it came from somewhere and not just by chance. Meanwhile, Shenny was also lying in the well and remembered Angela, how Xiaon humiliated him, and how then after that Angela anxiously clarified whether Xiaon was really doing this to him again. The guy was lying down and felt very hungry, because there was not enough of her lying here. Accidentally, his hand touched something soft. He assumed it could be an animal, but panicked when he realized that there was someone in the well besides him. Cold sweat was running down Shenny's cheek, and when he saw someone's mouth with huge teeth, he was terribly scared. His heart began to pound wildly, and he himself could not move from fear. The guy realized it was a monster. He was scared. He couldn't believe that he was going to die now. Mentally, he began to calm himself, to convince himself that there was nothing to be afraid of. After recovering a little, Shenny began to think. The guy was thinking about why the monster was here and what was wrong with him. After he noticed the chain on the monster, but did not understand who put him here and for what. Shenny stood up and decided to throw a stone at him to check if he was alive. The monster did not move, hence the guy concluded that he was dead. 10 days have passed. The monster also lies and does not move. Not a single sound was heard from him. The guy is sitting next to him and realizes that he will not be able to get out. Shenny doesn't even have water, let alone food, and the well is too deep. He can't get out of this trap. The young man was in deep despair. He understood that he would never get out of here again. He would never see Angela. His eyes filled with tears, he mentally apologized to Angela for not coming back to her anymore. He began to remember all the moments associated with Angela. One day after his escape, she asked the guy if he really decided to run away. When other Shenny were bullied as a child, shouting that he was useless trash, Angela approached him to treat his wounds, telling him to be more careful in the future. He remembered all the happy moments with her, even when they were walking, and she took him in her arms. When Shenny ran away, Angela asked him not to do that anymore, saying that he would always be with him. But now it's all ruined, because he's in a well from which it's impossible to get out. But then he realized that he couldn't just give up, he had to survive. In case of failure, Xiao's gang could get to Angela and hurt her, which was what he was most afraid of. He wanted the best for Angela, and it was impossible to call this to happen. Besides, he also did not want to let them kill themselves. He told himself every time that he had to survive, that he couldn't just die like that. There was no way out for Shenny, but the craving for life was present, so despite everything, the young man ate the demon's flesh. He ate it quickly, swallowing it in large chunks so as not to feel this disgusting taste and get sated faster. But the fact that he had just eaten was terrible, perhaps as was the taste of raw demon meat. He was shoving writing into himself almost by force, while some flew to the ground from his mouth. Over time, he got used to the taste of monster meat, even said it wasn't so bad. Pulling away from the dead monster a little, he thought to himself about Angela. The guy begged the girl to wait for him, but then blood started pouring out of his mouth. He screamed at the top of his voice in pain, leaning on his hands. He began to be overwhelmed by a huge force that completely engulfed his entire body. His appearance has also changed. Horns protruded from his head, his hands became black, with sharp fingers. There were also holes in them from which purple light was coming. The guy looked up and easily reached the base of the well with his hand, because it began to stretch like gum. Shenny quickly went upstairs, pulling his arm back into its former shape. When he was outside, his appearance turned back to the old one. Shenny realized that he had finally climbed out and was very happy. The guy looked at his hands and did not understand whether it was a dream or whether he had turned into a monster and received some kind of power. Shenny assumed that he had turned into that monster and thought, if so, then it was necessary to hide it from other people. At this time, a man was standing behind him, who was watching everything that was happening from behind a tree. He was horrified when he realized that this boy was a monster, and then decided to report this to the village headman for safety. At that moment, a butterfly flew into Shenny's mouth. He did not realize that he had just accidentally swallowed, but the butterfly was eaten. Big wings appeared behind the guy's back, the same as that butterfly had once. He started screaming in fright, saying that he was afraid of heights, ordering them to let him go to the ground. And so it happened. With a crash he fell, so much so that all the birds in the neighborhood scattered. For millions of years, humans and demons have been living in hatred for each other. One day, people who called themselves the Chosen Ones received a special power, a glimmer of light. This power was suitable for fighting demons. The Chosen Ones decided to expel all monsters from their lands in order to kill them forever. Each demon had its own level of strength, so people put a seal on the strongest demons. There is a legend in the world about an organization called the Cage. Its members have sealed 18 demons all over the world. These people, always wandering outside the mundane, but everywhere, were incredibly strong and mysterious. Thanks to them, humanity has enjoyed happiness and tranquility for hundreds of years, but monsters are still hiding in the most impenetrable darkness of this world. A girl named Angela is standing at a large house in the village of Taoyuan, looking down thoughtfully. After the girl asked for help from the council to find Shenny, she left the room and saw a guy standing near the fence and saying her name. Without hesitation, Angela ran into his arms, glad that he was alive. Shenny stroked her head and said with a grin that everything was fine with him. He was holding a rabbit behind his back. Previously, the guy brought her the corpses of small animals as a gift, and she blamed him for it. The girl thought it was knifing. But now the guy had the opportunity to bring live wild animals for Angela, so without hesitation he handed her a rabbit, saying that it was his gift. Suddenly, the girl, seeing the danger behind Shenny, sharply exclaimed that he should take care of himself. The guy turned around sharply and immediately fell into a trap of ropes. Angela began to worry very much about him. Xiaoan and his gang were standing behind him. They specially made this trap to capture Shenny. The leader of this gang, looking complacently at the guy who fell into his trap, mocked. Xiaoan noticed that now the young man would not be able to just run away, as happened then. Mocking, he was surprised at the behavior of Shenny, because he finally matured, since he did not dare to leave the forest when they were guarding him. But he came to his girlfriend. Resolutely, the guy voiced his desire. He longed for Shenny to beg him for mercy by kneeling before him. At this time, Angela was very worried, shouting to the leader of the gang to come to his senses and let the guy go. But he did not understand her, because he believed that there was nothing good in a young man trapped in a trap and she was taking care of him in vain. After that, Xiaoan approached the girl and put his arm around her shoulders, saying that it was better for her to stay with him, arguing that she should like everything. The girl tried to escape from his arms, screaming for him to let her go, but Xiaoan did not let go. Shenny was watching everything from the trap. He was furious after seeing Xiaoan's behavior towards Angela, so he decided to use his power by ordering her to leave. The trap was destroyed in an instant, which made everyone scared. Our main character did not want to show people his essence, but this attitude of his enemy towards his beloved forced him. People ran away screaming, mistaking the guy for a monster. Shenny abruptly flew up to the leader of the gang and knocked him to the ground, grabbing the guy by the throat. He almost wanted to kill Xiaoan, but the latter begged him for mercy. The young man did not understand how someone like him could be spared, because it was from him for many years that Shenny had suffered various humiliations that could not be corrected by a simple apology. He was glad that his enemy would finally feel the fear that our hero had experienced for many years on his own skin. But the battle was interrupted after Angela's request to leave Xiaoan. The guy abruptly stood up and looked at the girl, gradually withdrawing his strength. The leader of the gang, wasting no time, got up and ran away in terror. Shenny looked at the girl, afraid that she would take him for a monster, and pronounced her name. She just said that it wasn't him and continued to watch him in horror. The guy was in despair and did not understand why he was mistaken for a monster. After all, he is the same person as everyone else. Angela, with her head down, was silent. Suddenly screams were heard. There were a lot of people with guns in the back, shouting that the one they were looking for was in front of them. Two people grabbed Angela. She tried her best to break free, ordering him to let her go, but it was useless. The man standing in front turned to Dewey, telling him not to dare to attack them. People shouted that the guy was a monster, and the man noticed that he had no idea what our main character went through. But he understands that people who have become monsters have no right to life. He offered to go to Shenny with them, but not to bear his claws. After that, the crowd aimed their weapons at the monster guy, shouting that they could not let him escape, because he would devour everyone, so he should be killed. Our main character chuckled to himself at the man who called his strength claws. Shenny said that there was no reason he would not go with them, because all these days he had been lying in a well, next to a bound monster, without a chance of salvation. The man replied that he had apparently entered the forbidden territory and encountered a demon eater, and the guy turned into a monster, so he won't be able to destroy his identity while in the village. He also said that the mission of their village, as one of the forbidden places of the seal of the organization cage, and that it is impossible to allow the monster to enter the world. Shenny said that for many years, when he was an orphan, he was humiliated by Xiaoan and others, but not one adult helped him. The guy didn't understand why he became a monster, because he didn't do anything wrong, but he was already surrounded by the whole village. At this time, Angela was watching what was happening with tears in her eyes. After the guy asked the man what kind of personality he then has since he does so. The man ordered the guard to grab him and prepare a sealing sword, and the guy, in his opinion, finally became a demon. There was a crash. The village was attacked by monsters. People were in a panic and ran away as quickly as possible, while shouting at the top of their lungs. The demons were rampaging, and the man realized that ordinary monsters are grouped only when the primordial monster is active. But only the 8th devouring demon could cause such a big change, and Dewey has now really become one. One of the monsters attacked the man, but Shenny quickly beheaded him and noticed to himself that he was not a monster, but a man. Mentally, he begged Angela to trust him, because no matter what way, no matter what pain or suffering, it didn't matter to him. Shenny wanted the girl to wait for him, and he, in turn, would appear before her as a person. Angela was standing in the middle of a battlefield of demons and humans, surrounded by a huge number of dead bodies. She didn't understand where the monsters came from and what happened. The girl decided to run away quickly, but suddenly one of the demons attacked her. A couple of moments and she would have been dead. But Shenny managed to kill the monster in time, cutting it into 2 parts. After that, he quickly flew up to the girl, promising to do everything possible so that the monsters could not hurt her. Angela looked into the guy's eyes and said his name. At this time, the man understood that Shenny had not only saved him, but also protected Angela. Hence he concluded that the guy had preserved completely human emotions and intelligence. He was very surprised, because he had considered the young man a demon eater before. An elderly man standing behind hit the man, saying that now was not the time to give himself up to thoughts. He screamed in pain. Despite this, he continued to yell at him, saying that he had completely forgotten about their plan. To this the man replied that he was not out of his mind like that. The second cheered up and ordered the residents to be taken away according to the plan, and he, in turn, would cover him. They abruptly gave the order to the first and second group. The first one had to take away all the residents, and the second one had to go after an elderly man. He exclaimed about the need to hold out and protect the others. The people confirmed the order in unison. At this time, Shenny, taking Angela by the hand, promised to take her out of here. The girl filled the young man about the others. He turned his gaze to the fighting people. People scolded because there were only more monsters. Someone exclaimed that it was necessary to hold on until all the residents were safe. One young man shouted to the headman for help, as the demon was too strong and he could not cope alone. At that moment, the monster ate one of the people. The head gave the order for the warriors to detain all the demons. The monster attacked him from the back, but the man reacted quickly and cut off several limbs of the demon. But he grabbed another elder. People planned and began to exclaim that if they did not save the headman, then they would all be finished, because there were too many monsters. At this time, Shenny quickly flew up to the demon and, using his strength, quickly cut the monster and saved the headman. All the people were amazed. Our main character turned to the people, who were very concerned about the condition of the man. Angela screamed Shenny's name. Everyone was surprised that the guy was helping them, and not fighting against them. They realized that he was not a monster at all, and the headman noticed that it didn't matter if he was a demon. The village was saved thanks to him. Dewey explained that he had saved the village only for Angela's sake. At this time, the man noticed the frozen people and gave the order to move on. The guy turned to the girl, telling her to follow him to get away from dangerous territory. Angela agreed. It was heard how people were given orders to remain calm and prepare to defend themselves from another monster. Suddenly, a loud baby crying was heard. The child was screaming at the top of his lungs, lying on the ground. Angela ran to the child to save him, and Shenai tried to stop her to no avail. It was her brother. The girl ran to him and began to calm him down, saying that her sister was nearby. The child began to calm down, but still cried, saying his sister's name. Suddenly, a monster attacks the girl and the child from behind. Dewey, looking at this, panics and shouts her name. He quickly flies up to the demon, cutting it. After that, the guy runs to Angela, saying that he will take her to the doctor. The girl refuses and says that looking at him, she sees his fear. Shenny advises her to save her strength, but she began to apologize to him for her doubts about him. The guy realized that they could no longer be together all the time, and told Angela about it. She abruptly lost consciousness. Shenny got very angry and let himself out of control. People in horror began to exclaim that the guy was not himself. They did not understand why. After the recent help, he began to behave like this. One person noticed that the first one should take a closer look and understand all the danger, because now Shenny was scarier than any monster. The guy turned his gaze to the people and flew up to one of the warriors, grabbing him by the throat. The man began to choke, and the headman shouted to Dewey that Angela would not approve of such an act. Suddenly, Shenny threw the panting warrior to the ground. The man screamed from suffocation and pain. The headman told about the need to seal our main character in a forbidden territory because of the natural laws of people and monsters, because the guy himself saw that the demon in him almost killed a man. The man didn't want it to come to this either. Dewey flew up to the girl and picked her up, apologizing for not being able to save her. After that, the guy turned to the people, saying that he would leave because he was not going to take revenge and harm them and there was no reason to worry. The headman explained that he only wanted to warn Shenny about the great danger threatening him and offered his last help. All existing monsters are descended from the progenitor. He has terrible power, and he created the strongest demons, and they summoned the rest of the monsters. After the appearance of these demons, demon slayer squads appeared. Thanks to everyone's efforts, they killed and sealed them. Among the 18 demons sealed by the Cage organization, the 8th demon, the Devourer, has the ability to absorb. Once he was a real disaster. The Devourer was impossible to kill, so he was sealed inside the well, as well as the other 17 demons. Hundreds of years later, a village of several hundred people gradually formed on the place where chaos and destruction reigned, and it is the current village of Taoyuan. The man explained to the guy that he could risk his life and seal the Dewey here, thereby fulfilling the mission of the village. But the headman saw how the young man grew up, and that he did nothing wrong, so he will keep our main character alive, and the village will order to keep his secret. But there are also many villages and organizations outside, such as Taoyuan village. Some of them are much more serious and powerful. He warned the guy that he should realize this, because he would have to live like a wild beast, stay alone and in no case approach people. Shenny thanked the man and said that he was not going to become a beast, as he had made a promise to Angela. The headman interrupted him, saying that there was a way to become a man again. Dewey turned to him with interest. Mentally, the guy began to turn to Angela, remembering his childhood. When Shenny was little, Xiaoan and the others didn't accept him. Then the girl told him that since he was considered an outsider, He should not give up, but on the contrary, surpass them and always stand straight. Shenny thought to himself that now he, no different from the monster, follows the girl's words and is looking for an opportunity to become a human again. The headman told the guy that in the ancient records of the village of Taoyuan, which they kept, it was said that only demons knew about the ways of turning people into monsters. The specific content has been lost over time, but other organizations may still have records. The organization Kara is one of the strongest organizations in the fight against monsters. You can find them if you go straight to the southeast of the village. The man also advised Shenny to try to blend in with them without revealing his appearance, otherwise he faces death. After that, our main character set off on a journey to find a way to become human again and fulfill the promise made to Angela. Loud sounds came from the forest, so much so that all the birds flew away. There was a battle between a monster and people. The young man jumped from behind at the demon with swords in his hands and hit exactly the target. With a shout, people exclaimed that the monster should not be allowed to leave. After being wounded, the demon weakened a little. One young man noticed that the deputy commander slowed him down and this is their chance to win. Suddenly the monster howled. It was a terrible sound. All the people who fought with him covered their ears. The demon, taking advantage of the moment, tried to leave. But the commander of the squad came out on the battlefield, uttering a spell, a spiritual thread. Everyone was very happy about his arrival. Suddenly, red threads appeared out of nowhere. It was a commander's ability. He used them to attack the monster, but purple circles appeared above the demon, creating a portal. The monster climbed in and disappeared, and the portal closed. People realized that they had failed again by letting him go. They said that the demon was a little stronger than the devourer, but they did not understand why it was so difficult to catch him, because he was quite weak and could not stand fast running. The warriors did not know what to do, since even the red thread of the commander could not catch him. The head ordered everyone to be calmer, even though the demon slipped away this time and won't appear for a while, because now they have another matter of paramount importance. Crazed crowds of monsters began to appear everywhere and everyone should worry about it. There are remnants of the smell on the red thread, and if you follow it, you can find the place where the demon was born. Having said this, the commander gave an order to 3 people, the trunk, the master and the pikes. They had to unite in one group and hunt down the monsters, and then deal with them. One of them approached the commander-in-chief with a question. Because of this, he was surprised that they had not left yet, and asked what he needed. The warrior asked where the commander was going, who ordered them to hunt down the monster. He replied that he would go to Yacheng to check the situation, because something bad was happening there. Meanwhile, Dewey was in Yacheng. The guy was mentally thinking about how he got here. The young man heard on the way to the city that a small group of Mengju of the Kara organization was going to select people for some task, so Shenny specially hurried here. The guy initially thought that this city was the same as his village, but he did not expect to see such high houses and a huge number of people. A group of people passed by the young man and by chance Dewey heard their conversation. It was not surprising to them that Yacheng is one of the main bases of the leader of Ra Mengju, because the city is prosperous. One guy noticed that the city became like this thanks to the patronage of strong people. To this, another young man told him not to be a jerk, but the guy explained that Commander Mengju is one of the strongest commanders of Kara. Our main character understood that he knew very little about the Kara organization and decided to eavesdrop on the guy's conversation. One of them continued to talk about Commander Mengju and said that he was very kind to people, but when it comes to hunting demons, he behaves very strictly, and not a single monster escaped from his hands. His red thread is able to recognize even the most disguised monster. The guy wondered how it was possible not to idolize such a strong man. Privately, Shenny suggested that perhaps the commander's ability would reveal his essence. Suddenly one of the guys turned to Dewey, asking what he had forgotten here, because he looked like a beggar in his opinion. Our main character remained silent and because of this he was pushed to the ground, shouting that they were addressing him. The guy noticed that there was a very expensive establishment here and ordered Shenny to get out of here. His friends asked him to be less violent, and the guy thought that they were somehow connected with him. He turned around and shouted at them to go inside if they wanted to eat and mind their own business. Meanwhile, Dewey successfully escaped from them. After that, they were very surprised by the behavior of the guy, calling him a strange type and assuming that he was mute, because when they spoke to him, he ran away. Another noticed that he might have an urgent matter and offered to go eat. Shenny ran into a dark alley and, leaning his hand on the wall, realized that thanks to the demonic power, he rushed here to catch the recruitment of the group. He was very hungry now, but in order to satisfy his hunger, he needed to eat living creatures, otherwise it would be increasingly difficult for him to control himself. The guy noticed that, Fortunately, he was not particularly excited now, and only needed to calm down a little, and then return to his usual form. Suddenly there were sounds from above. Shenny raised his head and saw a spider-like demon that had caught a human in its web. He was calling for help. The guy quickly used his strength and, flying up to the monster, defeated him. He rescued the child from the web and, taking him in his arms, tried to talk to him, but he lost consciousness. Dewey understood how lucky he was that the boy did not see his strength and was surprised by the appearance of a demon in the city. Suddenly the guy felt a pleasant smell from the boy. He wanted to eat it, but immediately abandoned the idea. Meanwhile, Commander Mengju was standing near the yellow fog in the city. A boy ran out to meet him, joyfully shouting his name, saying that his car was in the fog. The man promised to return the car to the child, but only if he left here, because it was very dangerous there. The boy quickly agreed and ran, but then, turning around, asked if it was true that Mengju was currently performing a special task. The commander confirmed and asked the boy to fulfill his special assignment. It consisted in warning others not to get close to the yellow gas. The man asked if the child could handle it, to which the boy promised mandatory execution of the order. The child ran to warn others, and Mengju turned away, pulling a mask over his face so as not to suffocate from the yellow gas. Our main character was lying on a bed in someone else's apartment, and 3 people were standing next to him. The boy asked to explain the reason that the uncle still has not woken up. She told him to be quiet so as not to wake him up. Suddenly, Shenny opened his eyes. The child was delighted, saying that his uncle had finally woken up. The man standing behind turned around to call Miss Tanya. The girl, leaning on the bed, asked about Dewey's well-being. He only asked permission to ask a question. Suddenly, the door to the room opened. A man entered it together with a girl whose name was Tanya. He told her that the guy had finally woken up. Tanya turned to Shenny, crossing her arms, confirming that he had woken up. She touched him, saying she would check on him first. The guy asked to begin by explaining what happened to him. Tanya noticed that the disputes also affected the young man's memory. After the young man saved the child, he inhaled poison and fell into a coma, but Mengju pulled him out and brought him here, Tanya explained. The girl standing next to him happily noticed that she and her husband were very worried about him, since the other children had already woken up, but not him. Tanya asked Shenny if he would allow himself to be examined after he found out what he wanted. The guy agreed, and the girl began the examination. She noticed that her eyes were normal, and her fingers were fine too. Then she patted him on the back and said that everything was fine with this, too, without serious deviations. After that, she removed the blanket, because there was only one thing left to examine. But Shenny blushed and shouted that there was no need to check anything else, covering himself back with a blanket. Tanya explained that she just wants to ensure health, and if he doesn't want to, then it's worth forgetting about it. Only then be sure to complain if something hurts. The guy exclaimed that he absolutely would not complain. At that moment, Commander Mengju came into the room, asking if the guy had woken up. The man asked Tanya to leave them together for a conversation. Shenny became worried when he realized that this was the same commander. The man sat down behind a chair, telling the guy not to worry because he just came to talk. The young man asked what the commander would like to know. To himself, Shenny thought about what a man might be interested in, because judging by the doctor's words, it was he who brought him here. Respectively, the commander could notice his strength. Mengju did asked if the guy noticed anything unusual. Shenny said he didn't seem to have seen anything, and the commander asked him to relax and think slowly. The man explained that of course it was not worth asking the guy like that, because it could have been just a small attack of monsters. But when checking that area, he found that a nearby flycatcher monster was found near the southern walls of the city, and by this you can guess that someone moved his corpse. Shenny was surprised that the monster could be moved, but he realized to himself that he had gone unnoticed. The man said he didn't know. He only saw the child and that monster. The guy apologized and noticed that he could not help in any way. The commander accepted the apology and offered his help in case it was needed. But in the meantime, he said to rest. The man stood up, saying that the selection would begin soon, so it was time for him to go. But Shenny was interested in this and he asked about the selection. The commander noticed that if he plans to participate, it is better to change his mind, or he will die. He also said that the Devourer is the weakest among the 18 demons, and their ancestors paid a fatal price for him. They only sealed him in a deep well, hoping that he would not recover and eventually die. It's been over 100 years since the Devourer was sealed. Most likely he's dead. Shenny didn't understand how it could happen that they still didn't know about his death. The man noticed that people were too weak, even he sighed a little more poison, lost consciousness for a few days, because Shenny was very weak, and therefore doomed to death. The commander told the guy to go home and just live. The guy understood that he had no way home because he became a demon eater, and after that he lost his haven. The young man decided to do everything possible to join the punishment, because it was the only way to find an opportunity to become a human and return to his past life. Dewey went to the selection venue. There were many people standing there who were impressed by the appearance of Commander Meng-ju. The guy was very glad that he managed to come. People were surprised by the rumors that everyone present came to the selection and had no idea how to fight this year. Suddenly, Shenny accidentally bumped into some girl. She turned around and looked at him with contempt. After that, Commander Meng-ju came out and began to make his speech. He politely addressed all the people present, expressing his respect. After that, he introduced himself and began explaining the rules for selecting people for the Kara organization. They were very simple. It was allowed to use any methods to stay in the circle. There were 200 people in total.